All right. So, welcome, JP. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your weekend to sit down and look at SuperBinder. I'm really excited about this tool. I think it is directly in line with some of what you've been inspiring me with your human-centered approach to AI, which I think is absolutely a great idea, absolutely key. And I think that this could be a tool that I hope a lot of people can leverage. It's completely free and open source. But SuperBinder, I think, is a great prototype or a great early release of a powerful tool that will bring teams together to collaborate with AI in a much more productive way and unlock some of the capabilities that we're looking for in my world, which is we do a lot of policy considerations and strategic planning. And I know in your world, as in the federal government, you're doing all the same sorts of things as we are,
That's right.
but different subjects, different topics, and different approach. So I think it could be a great tool. Maybe for the folks who haven't seen you before on one of these videos, you could just quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll dive in and start playing around with the tools.
For sure. Hey, everyone. My name is JP. I'm the Chief Data Officer for the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, and I'm also leading the implementation of artificial intelligence within the federal government. More specifically, I'm really focusing on introducing a human-centered AI adoption strategy we help, where we use AI to enhance people's capabilities instead of replacing them. One thing, Janik, I'm super excited about because I've been playing with your previous product. We've got Logic Studio. And so Logic Studio, we've been able to connect various agents together through sockets. And from what I understand, SuperBinder goes beyond that, and we could do something similar, but at this point, you do it in a collaborative fashion.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to see how that works.
Well, so am I. I actually think that there's a use case here to some point merge these two together. What I like about SuperBinder that you're going to see is that you can literally just type at your agent, and that agent can have a ton of information at its fingertips to help you at in just a few keystrokes. And so that's really a lot faster than kind of connecting the sockets in Logic Studio. But what I also like about Logic Studio is that you can build these powerful agentic workflows that are repeatable, that are sort of auditable, and that you can build in many inputs and things like that in a systematic fashion. So there may be some version of this where they all come together in the future. But what I thought I would do is sort of dive in, do a screen share for you, and walk
Sure.
through the concept of it. I know you've been poking around at it already and having to look at it. I wanted to just walk through the key features, and maybe we can have a conversation as we go back and forth around why that feature, why this is important, what the thought process was, and that'll hopefully help to explain to you what I was thinking, but also help to unpack some of the features as well. Yeah, so key things, real time. So everything that I see, you see in real time, which is cool. So if I add a section to the binder, if I upload a file, if I chat, if I collaborate with the AI, if I build an agent, you see all of those things happening in real time. We have these agents that we're going to be able to build, so I'll show you that in a minute. Probably the hardest part of this was actually being able to go in and process all different file types like PDFs, documents, images, etc. Make them, indexed, OCR'd, editable, and then sync across all of us.
Mm,
That was actually probably the most of the complexity of the app. Um, but then, as you said, we've got these dynamic sections as well. So you could actually just have this living document. You could build in sections just like you do folders. You could go January, February, March, whatever, or you could go by function like project plan and outcomes and outputs. So you can really create any sort of project structure that you want through these sections. We humans can chat amongst ourselves, and we can also chat with AI. And of course, 100% free, fully customizable. It's essentially the same architecture as Logic Studio, so single web service to deploy it. The difference here is we actually have some data retention to
mm,
maintain your binder, and so there is a database in the back of it. It's using a MongoDB, but it's easily substituted out for any other database that you want.
that's great.
So we can build our agents, we can organize our data, and then here's a little bit of the techno babble, if you will, in the back. So there's that, and then there's the GitHub there, so you can go check out the GitHub. And then this links to our Twitter there, to our X.
Janik,
So
anybody adopting this platform, do you recommend that they be familiar with that tech stack?
you don't, I mean, if you're an end user, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
If you are going to go and adapt it to your purposes, it is highly JavaScript driven. So it's Vue 3.5 front end, Node.js backend. What I would say is it's with AI though, because the code you can easily just port things now, right? So you could take the entire Node backend and you could port it to any other tech stack you wanted. You could take the MongoDB and you could port it to any other database that you want, whether SQL or non-SQL. It's really, really just getting easy to port between things. And so I think what's great about this is all of the logic is there. You just
Mm,
need to turn it into whatever you want it to be. So I would say don't get fixated on the tech stack. Focus more about the fact that if you value this way of working, then it's quite easy to port over there. And all the code is there, all the logic is quite easy to understand.
great.
So let's get into it. I'm going to make a binder. So the whole idea is everything we do is in these binders, right? So the binders have a unique name, and I'm going to create one here. I'm just going to put my own name in there for the display name, and then I'm just going to create a binder name just called JP and Janek. And so if anybody else comes into this room at this point, it's unlocked. Anybody else can join us. So if you are in there and you create and you use the same JPN Janek binder name and hit join, you will fall into the same binder space.
Mm.
You can also create a unique binder by clicking this, and it just gives you a unique identifier. That way, if
Ah,
you
that's
don't
what
want
that was.
anybody to guess your binder name, you just create a unique one. You can also name it anything you want, really. And then you can also just copy the URL. So once you do that, you've copied it. I can send it to you on the chat if we want.
Mm,
But I'm going to go back to JP and Janek and hit join. And right away you can see I'm the first user in the room. And if you are able to go to SuperBinder.live on your side and go to the same channel, JP and Janek, you should fall into the same room as well.
right. And then click join.
There we go. So JP
Yeah.
just joined the room. So there's two participants in the room, and navigation is pretty simple. First things first, across the top, you can go jump back to the home page or come back to the binder at any time. Green here along the top means you're connected to the web server in the background, so you're live. Unlike Logic Studio, which sort of has a timeout setting on it of maybe 10 minutes or something like that. This one works a lot harder to keep the connection live, so you shouldn't get
Mm,
timeouts unless there's something critical happens, like you lose an internet connection or whatnot. You can also sign out, so you can actually exit the session here, and it will take you right back to the lobby. And you'd have to come back in, but you can come back in under a new name as long as the channel is still open. Across the top, you've got the different sections that we're going to look at. So dashboard, we're going to get into sections, which is how our binder is structured, set some goals, build some agents, have a Q&A with our documents, and then we're going to collaborate with the AIs that we create. We also have a chat here, so we can pop open the chat at any time. And hi, JP. And you should be able to see that the chat increments at the top. So you should see that there's one chat message there. And we can see, well, as each other are typing. And so that's kind of fun. So we can have a little chat message going there. And then we've got the last two things are the lock, which will toggle the room lock. I haven't implemented it yet, but I'll have it prompt you for a password. So essentially, once you're
mm,
done, you can just password protect it, or you can just password protect it and then send it to a friend, and then they're the only ones who can get in. So it's kind of like you've got a unique room ID, but then password protected, meaning nobody else would be able to steal your room ID, your binder ID, I should say, nor would they be able to see your data. And then the
right.
last one, which will nuke everything, which is remove binder, which will actually just nuke our entire session, clear all of our data, clear all of our messages, clear all our content, and we're sort of back to an empty room at that point.
That's great.
So that's the walkthrough. The dashboard sort of shows us some of the stats, which everything's at 0 right now, but it gives you a sense of what we're going to build. And then we're good to go. So I'm going to step in here. I'm going to go into maybe we should set some goals first, actually. We have to think about what we're trying to collaborate on.
Right.
The idea with the goals is that when somebody comes in to look at the binder in the future, they'll know what we were trying to do. The other thing is your AI can read the goals as well. And so if you set a bunch of goals,
Mm,
they will adopt your goals as their goals. And so it helps to articulate clearly what we're trying to accomplish here. And I think that there's value in that just amongst ourselves because it's always good to have a clear-minded goal of what you're trying to achieve.
right.
However, it's also handy when that you don't have to re-explain yourself every time to the AI. So I thought a goal would just to be to explore the SuperBinder live app and talk about its key features. So I'm going to create that goal. You can edit this goal in real time. So if you want to edit my goal and make a different goal or whatever, you can do that. Oops. And then just click off. And then you can also add your own goals. And so we'll see each other creating goals as we go through here. So that's my first goal there is to explore SuperBinder. And then the second one is to showcase how we use key features like OCR, binder, binder sections, and of course, agents and collaboration. So I can add a couple of goals in there. Because we're building a binder, we have this idea that we have this kind of information space that we're going to occupy. Oh, you added a goal. Perfect. Understand how to navigate around SuperBinder. All right, great goals. Um, I'm just shifting to sections, and on my screen you can see it's pretty simple user interface. You've got this idea of sections. The plus button allows you to add root sections, so that's kind of
Mm.
your major sections. So you can add as many as you want. Um, for each one of these sections that you add, there's a couple things. You can hit the plus at any time and you can add subsections. So if I wanted this one to have a bunch of child sections, I can just do that. And then if I wanted to upload files, which I'll show you in a minute, we'll hit the upload button. I can rename any section here. So root section for our binder. So I can rename any of them. So as we start to build up sort of an information architecture, we can build those out a bit as folders. And then of
So
course you can,
Janik, I got a quick question there for you.
yeah,
So whenever I tackle a problem with my various agents, I first off I create a knowledge structure, and I try to capture as much information as possible about the topic I'm about to tackle. Is this where I would put that information?
that's right. So
Okay.
here we would let's say we're developing a policy. So I might come in here and say that rename this to be policy creation zone, and I expand on that, and then I rename this to be existing regulations. This one could be cross jurisdictional scan. This one could be, for example, um, current policies, um, current policy documents. This one here could be at the bottom. I don't know, future considerations. So you
Right.
could build out all of these things. So if you did a sort of a cross jurisdictional scan, you might have, for example, Canada, and you might also have Europe, and you could sort of go and build out your own
Mm,
data structure. The point being here is that you can design how your agents occupy this binder space. So, for
hmm.
example, you can create a jurisdictional agent that's an expert on Canada, and it will only read the content in Canada, and it will be able to answer that content in depth. And you can have another one called Europe, which will know everything about European policy, and it will be able to answer that in depth. And then you can bring them both into a chat room, and you can talk about what you're trying to achieve, and
Mm,
you can ask Canada questions, you can ask Europe questions, you can even ask them to look at what each other said and do a compare and contrast.
that's
But that's the
powerful.
idea that you would build it out here, and then what we're going to put into this structure is we're going to put documents. So that's things we've created, bringing into this binder space, and we're going to create artifacts, and those are things that the AI or we have created
Mm,
that we're going to add into this binder altogether. And so to that point, I could hit another plus here, and I could say rename this and say like policy drafts, and then I could build this one out and say like I don't know, AI policy, whatever. And then here in the policy drafts, this is where we can have the AI save its content into this folder, and be able, then we'll have a mix of all of the documents and artifacts together that the AIs will be able to understand.
That's great. And I could go in and I'm doing the same thing as you at this point, and so that shows that.
Yeah.
So I'm going into cross-jurisdictional scan. I'm adding Asia. So it just really shows it's real. It's real
Yeah.
live.
Yeah, and as an aside, I think making things live, so it syncs between you, me. It also syncs to the database in real time. So every change we made is captured. So if we all leave our session, it's right where you leave it when it comes back. And then also anything that the AI says is synced between all of us in real time. So the AI sync, you, me, any other participants, and the database. It all gets synced up in real time as well. So it's kind of like a multiplayer game there, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then into this space, I can start to upload some documents here. So for example, if I wanted to have current policy documents, and I'm going to just bring in a mixed bag of stuff. I'm going to bring in my SuperBinder demo. So I started to create a mixed bag of random things that I was finding, and building for the demo. So I'm actually just going to bring in all these files, and you'll see that I have a cross section of different files I'm bringing in. If you expand the current policy documents on your side, you should see these files there now.
Yeah, I see it.
Some of them are going to have an eyeball beside them because these documents are on my computer and I'm uploading them, and I'm interpreting them, doing that OCR and doing a bunch of other things. But all of that gets synced. So like the text content gets synced, but what's not getting synced on your side is the actual images. So if you actually
Mm.
click on for one of these, I have this item here, the depopulation index. Can you see that file in there?
Yeah, I see it. Yep.
Yeah, so if you click on it, it'll now load that dynamically from the server. So the server is kind of being is syncing everything up between us. So can you see the 8 billion people 2022 picture there?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
with the hockey stick.
Yeah, the interesting hockey stick up and hockey stick down. So not
Mm-hmm.
only can you see a picture, you can also go and you can click on text and you can see what has the AI interpreted this. So as I've uploaded this file, it's done a complete AI interpretation of whatever is on the picture. So
Mm.
it has the text that it's taken off of the page. It also has its own interpretation of this. And then it has features like line graph, label, population projections, peak, etc. And so it's OCR. So it's not only pulled the text off of it, it's given you its best AI interpretation of this as well. And now that means that we can actually chat. We could go in and start to chat with this document right away, and the AI will absolutely understand what the point of it was and be able to comment on it. And so that's when you switch between image and text. And you can do that with any of your files.
Mm.
Similarly, if I click on an Excel sheet, one of the problems that AI has is it's really bad at understanding table data. So what I've built here is an interpreter that can take table data, so multiple sheets of Excel data, and actually brings them in table structure. So it's easy for us to read. But if we go in and look at it in JSON format, we've built this out in a way that AI will absolutely be able to understand this data because it's structured in a way AI natively interprets with this JSON. So rather than being kind of hundreds of lines of comma separated values or whatever, where it's not really sure what this number is associated with, in this Excel interpreter, it's able to actually build out structured data from the Excel information, and then you can come in and you can just edit it here as well. So if you wanted to change John Smith age to 74, you can go back and now we've got John Smith at 74 years old. So you can work in with this data after you've uploaded it. It is now living in the binder and it's separated from its original data set. And now you should see on your side that John Smith should show up as being 74 there in our data set. So not only can we share files collaboratively, we can now start to edit the files collaboratively, and
Mm.
those changes will show up and reflect on each other's systems and to the AI in real time as well.
That's amazing. I love it.
Another one that I liked. So, for example, look at this graph. So this was a New York Times Census Bureau graph. Bringing it in here, It's interpreted all of the text and it's looking at the composition and it's showing the different percentages and things like that, and it's interpreting what it's seeing. But what if I wanted to interpret this a little bit differently? I can actually OCR this again, so I can have the AI interpret this again. I can click on the pencil and I can actually change the instructions here as to what I want it to do. And so instead of interpreting the image and then extracting the text, I could say, create me a table of all of the numeric figures you see on this diagram. And I can save that. And then when I OCR it again, it's using the language model in the background and it's building out now a complete data table there, right? So this is really important because the way that you configure your AI interpreter is dramatically going to change the way the data is useful downstream.
Mm-hmm.
I could have gone back, like for example, if I go back to the image and I change my OCR prompt, I could say, write me a compelling briefing on this population change to my executive director. And then I could hit save on that, and then I could interpret this image again. And now it's going to be in a completely different format here, right? So now it's a briefing note. So now it's talking about what's the subject, the key takeaways, possible implications, and recommendations. So how you configure its interpretation is absolutely key. And then you can go through and you can reuse some of these prompts really to understand images and parse through some things like that. So
Janik, I've got a question for you.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
in my approach, I have a sort of a four-level capability model, and in there I start talking about how you become the director and how you start not just prompting, but you're directing the agent or the AI to do any specific thing. And here, if I understand correctly, when we're looking at an image, it's not just interpreting what the image is, you are giving it additional direction to interpret that image. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. So, for
that's great.
example, I mean, I took a paper of the JFK papers. I just took a random sheet out of it, right? And so you can either have it extract the text, which would allow you to parse through the content in a literal sense, right? So I could do that, and it's going to parse through the content. Or you can, in this case, instruct it. So there's the parsed content. So we have like the verbatim content there. We have an interpretation, and then we have the document features such as date, statistical information, key questions, etc. Or I could go back and I could say like this is where your thinking comes in as to what you want to
Mm-hmm.
do with this content. You could say develop a narrative timeline of events as articulated in this document. And in fact, if I save that, and then if I were to upload all of the documents, it would actually interpret all of the documents following that instruction. So you can do these things in bulk as well. But yeah, so now we've got a date driven 1954 to 63, 64, and so forth.
Mm.
And then the relevant information there being drawn from it. So yeah, you're sort of in the driver's seat here. It requires a lot of critical thinking from you to
Uh,
be able to understand what you want to achieve. But again, if you're not certain, then you can just change the prompt and you can go forward and interpret some of this content again. So you could actually do this against a large data set and experiment with different ways of understanding the information.
Hey, Janica, while you were doing that, I created a folder called SuperBinder documents at the bottom there on your left-hand side. And I took screenshots of your system, and I often use this technique to create a how-to manual. So
Yes, yeah,
and so here in one of our objectives is to how do we navigate around, and when you go on the OCR, it actually explains the
yeah,
different screens and whatnot.
yeah.
So another way to start capturing requirements for those out there.
So this is great. I love this folder that you've created. What I want to do with it is build an agent now that is going to create a user manual just based on the screenshots, not telling it
Perfect.
anything else. We can have it start to build a user manual if you want to see that.
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's go over to agents. So here I can come into this space. I can hit add. I'm going to make an agent, just call it UX, right? Just as a simple name. When I'm building an agent, it has a name, so it has to have a name. That's how we refer to it. The description is whatever you like. So an agent to build out a manual from screenshots. All right, so you can give it an avatar. So if you find any picture on the internet, you can find that URL and just drop it in, and that'll be the avatar for the agent. Or it'll pick one of, I think, 12 or 16 different random avatars. You can pick your model. And in this case, I did a lot of testing, and I found Gemini 2 was giving pretty solid results. All of the image interpretation under the hood is fixed at Gemini, but the agents themselves, you can use any of these agents, but I've been having good luck with the Gemini agent, so I'll leave it as the default. I can add a system prompt, and this again, if just to recap for folks, a system prompt is the how you want it to do something, and the user prompt is the what you want it to do. So the how would be, write in markdown format for easy reading user manual experience and export. Right, so I could do that. Always define your acronyms. Don't use jargon if it can be avoided, right? This is a how I want it to operate. And then in terms of the what, for example, I'm going to add two prompts here. One is I'm going to say, analyze the following information to help respond and build user manual for this app, right? I'm not going to tell it what app. And then the second thing is I can actually either give it documents, so I can actually go in and pick those documents you gave it, which would be tedious, but I'm actually just going to go in and pick a section. I'm just going to pick your SuperBinder documents there. It's going to bring in screenshots, and it's going to bring in all that content underneath it. So you can just attach an entire tree there and confirm selection. So it has the root, it has your subfolder, and then it has all contents coming into it. This agent now, whenever you interact with this agent, it's now knowledgeable of everything in that folder. And don't forget that when you built that, you didn't tell it anything. You literally just gave it screenshots, and now it's interpreted those screenshots as well. So everything it knows about the app, and we didn't even give it the name of the app, is because it read these images, and it will draw its own conclusions here. So now that we've built that agent, we've got the UX agent. I would invite you into a breakout room, JP. So go to the collaboration tab and click, I'm going to create a breakout room. I'm going to call it, let's call it user manual.
And as I go to collaboration, I do see the agent on my bottom left as well. So on my screen.
The agent's right there. So if you are in a breakout room, which I am, and you click on an agent, it will automatically fill it in. So you don't have to worry about typing like at my complex agent name or whatever. You can just click on the agent name at any time and type it in and say, okay, at UX, please make a first draft for this user manual based on the features you know. So do you see that on your side? You see the wall of text it's building? So we haven't told it anything. We just gave it the folder, and it says, here's a first draft user manual for the SuperBinder based on the information. So draft 1, getting started, creating a SuperBinder, joining, unique, URL. So it's interpreted this from just reading your screenshots.
That's right.
And now it has the various steps, users in the room. I don't see anything wrong yet. I actually think it's completely accurate as far as I can tell.
And it'll be interesting because I have kind of duplicate screenshots, one with content, one without. So it'll be interesting to see how
it seems not to have worried too much about that.
Right.
Now the fun thing is, as you go, if you're back in here adding more content in real time, if you were adding content, then it would be learning as you go, and that's the fun thing about this is once you set up an agent to just look at part of the binder in one of the sections, those sections are dynamic. The agent is now dynamic. And so for example, I'm going to add in, if I go to SuperBinder documents here, I'm going to create a new subfolder. I'm going to call it first draft. Oh, first draft. That's not right. First draft. So now I now have somewhere to put my first drafts, and I can go into my collaboration space, and there's this nice little handy save as artifact. So I'm going to click save as artifact, and then I can save this into the binder as well. So I can actually save this into the first draft folder and call it first draft manual. Save. And in my binder now, under first draft, I have first draft manual. It's now part of the agent's knowledge as well. And it's part of our record set. So we've got our first draft. We can then go on and make a second draft, a fifth draft, a 10th draft. As we go back and forth, we're building out the knowledge of it, and it also now remembers everything that is in its own folder. But it's lonely here, JP. Why am I the only one talking to it? You got to jump in.
I'm building my agent as you speak
Oh, okay,
there,
excellent,
Janik,
excellent.
and so I'm
Well,
gonna see if I'm gonna create a Builder Bob analyzer agent. Is going to be able to create me a strategic outline of this manual. This is a technique that I usually use. I use O1 actually to create the outlines, and so I'm adding the agent as we speak. So
I'm looking
show us
forward to
some
it.
more stuff. Show us some more stuff,
Yeah,
and I'll see how it goes.
perfect. One of the things I'll show while you're doing that then is just the Q&A tab. So this was one of the earliest features that I built into it, and the idea was that you can interrogate, interview, probe your entire binder all at once. So you could come in here and you could create a question such as what is the SuperBinder? And the idea here is that humans can add answers. So I could come in and say the SuperBinder is a cool AI app. And that's pretty cool. So that I can come in and add those things. I can also click the answer with AI. So if somebody wanted to click answer with AI, they can have the AI take a shot at it. It's read everything in the binder, so not just in its one agent section or one section of the binder, but it's read the whole thing. And here it's also pulled in the screenshots. So it's pulled in a couple of relevant screenshots and other artifacts. It's also pulled in the artifact that we created, which is the first draft binder. So what it's done is it's read the binder, it's answered the question, and it's given you a bibliography of links within the binder that you can use to jump to those particular sections and read that yourself. And so the idea is if you are in a kind of a question and answer format, something like where you're going in front of committee, for example, and people are asking you questions, the idea is that you could actually put those questions in and you could be able to interrogate hundreds of pages of content and get specific answers, have an AI interpret the answer, but also have the original content from the binder pop up that you can reference. The idea is that this is going to save a tremendous amount of time interpreting and navigating through complex policy, annual reports, financial statements, and so forth by building it into the binder in the first place, and then using this question and answer tool. So there's that. I see Builder Bob's been created.
Yeah, so I created Builder Bob Analyzer. Basically, when I approach a problem, I always like to create a strategic outline of the content. So what I did is I pointed it to the section of the screenshots, and hopefully it's responding now. Now I used
Well,
O1
hold on
as a model.
hold on
Yeah,
just 1 minute. I'm just looking
yeah.
at your oh, there it is. The sections it was showing up as 0 at first. I think it's good now. So
Okay, so if you go into collaboration and I put in that prompt.
there it is. It's a pretty solid manual, JP.
Yeah, and then I'll say at.
You can just
Is
click
there
the
a way?
name. You just click
You
its
just
name.
click the name.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Draft section 1.
There you go. It's gonna be
That's
a heck
great.
of a binder.
Yeah.
S-
I can't wait to try it with different uh,
Let,
different models,
let
different
me jump in.
formats.
I want to see a draft for 141. There we go.
Yeah, and obviously you could give better direction on format,
Yeah.
size,
These
content,
features in a
structure.
table structure.
And you know what? I that agent specifically builds outlines.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. I would have to create a
Yeah,
drafter agent
that's why
to,
it doesn't want to tell me anything, right? It just
yeah,
wants to build outlines.
which is great because
Yeah,
that's what it's designed to do.
yeah.
That's
Still
super.
going. Still building. I finished doing something last night and I fed the entire code base of SuperBinder into Logic Studio. And I had it build me basically an entire it went file by file in beast mode and it built out every basically a business analysis for each file, categorizing all of its features. And so it did that in beast mode, so it ended up with 50 or 80 different files. And then I had it go through and build it into a complete spec, like a project spec. And then I had to go through and do a costing of it in various platforms just for fun. And it was like, oh, it's going to be like 1,000 hours and whatnot. So it was really interesting. It could go through those iterations. And to the point is like I'd love to come in here and build a costing agent, for example.
Yeah.
Costing
And
agent.
and so when we're building it, we actually don't have to put in a user prompt because our user prompt could be in that direction, right?
Yes, it can be. And if you want it to always be present, you put it in the user prompt. Or if you want it to be reading the file content that you're giving it, for example, like I can have it read a specific artifact, like the first draft manual here. And then so give it the first draft manual. That's my costing agent. So I'll come in here and I'll clear that out and I'll say, costing agent, evaluate this app and build out some costing for it. So now it's going to go through and it's building out the different components. Gosh, oh, there's Drafter going and doing some stuff there. Um, so there you go. That's what it thinks the super binder is going to cost for the first year is $205,000,
Mm,
and then its ongoing annual cost will be $180,000. So it's interesting in the sense of it's able to read your manual. Now we've got a costing agent. You've got your drafting agent going down there and doing some drafting. And the funny thing is here, your agent answer was influenced by my agent's answer, right? Because we're all in the same conversation. So it's reading what Drafter said. It's
yeah.
come up with this $205,000 estimated first year cost, and then it has example pricing there, right? And it's
Hmm.
like we've not worked with AI in the sense that we're all dynamically on each other's toes in this environment like this before.
And what I really appreciate is as we bring in the agent, you don't necessarily have to put that user prompt because it actually takes the ongoing chat in context, um, just the way you said it. And so as we're building and the agents are inputting, it's building on itself, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, and then if you don't want to do that, by the way, just on the breakout rooms, you can have as many breakout rooms as you want. So you could have like costing room. And in here, we could be chatting with just like the costing agent, for example, and say, develop me some costing for cloud-based hosting. So I can go and work on some costing, and not be overwriting your user manual, for example. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why the idea that we jump into different breakout rooms is super handy.
Right.
Because you could have
Ah, that makes sense.
the breakout room, and I could just have it like, just like a chat room, Janix space. And so I can go in here and I can talk to your guy, my guy, I can talk to Builder Bob, I can do whatever, and we can have these side conversations. But if it creates something that's interesting, like let's say I like this cloud-based costing that it's going to come up with, and I want to incorporate that. I'm in my room. I save this into the binder as an artifact. So I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to say costing artifact for cloud, and I'm going to save that. Now your agent in your room has this as context now.
Mm.
And so then if you were to, for example, create, like, go back to your drafter and say, um, drafter write an exec summary, and include now notional costing.
So I'd have to play with it. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so I told it only 5 lines.
Oh, there you go. There's your 5 lines.
Yeah.
So I didn't look at what you told drafter.
Yeah, I've been trying to update it and modify it. Now,
Yeah.
for some reason on my side, it's using Drafter and it's using the outline for some reason,
What do you mean?
agent. So anyways, I'd have to play around with it. I'm sure I'm doing something wrong.
Sure. I don't have an outline agent. Who's that? I have
It's Builder Bob
Oh,
Analyzer.
Builder Bob Analyzer. Did you talk to both of them or just one of them?
Just one.
Okay. So
But
drafter
when you
conversation
use
one.
Drafter,
Yeah, I did it.
so it should only give you 5 lines, and so here it's using an outline for some reason. But anyways, I'm sure it's just because I quickly.
No, it's a good question, because the other thing is, like, these language models aren't natively configured to be helpful for multiple people. They're intending that there's only one of
Mm,
us here. And
right.
so what you're telling it, what I'm telling it versus the user prompt versus the system prompt, those things can definitely start to get into conflict over time.
I think so, yeah.
And then part of the reason of stepping into a separate room, like I did here, is that now it's forgotten about what's happening in the other chat rooms, and it seems to be focusing more here on its instructions.
So I'd be curious if it would be best to work. So I like the fact that you could go in a separate room and sort of build it out. And then in your following agents, it's probably best to refer to that agent to an artifact that the previous agent built, at least using my approach. So I typically build a knowledge structure. From that knowledge structure, I create that outline. I could go in depth on the outline, and then I could start drafting after that. But these are really in sequence. And so it would probably be best for each agent to create an artifact based on that work and then use that to draft their next artifact.
Hmm. Uh, It's possible. We're in the pioneering phase, so it's hard to say.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, actually, I just realized that the UX guy that we had created, I only ever gave him screenshots, so he didn't have the new stuff.
that's what I'm saying.
After. Yeah. So yeah, you could absolutely do that, and then hit save. So yeah, you can definitely, like, segment their knowledge across. So I'm gonna actually delete this one. I'm gonna replay it. You can definitely segment their knowledge across the binder in any way that you like. Um, and so now I just added to this original UX guy, I just added the compute estimates and stuff like that. So it
Mm,
has those familiar compute costs. But if I didn't want it to know that, or if I didn't want it to get distracted by those things, then I can have this one just stay on, existing policy, and have the new one write new policy, and then they can chat with each other, but they don't get confused by each other's data,
right.
if that makes sense.
It does.
So then in the QA thing, I'll just answer with AI again. Did you have any questions about the answer with AI thing?
Say that again.
Sorry, did you look at the Q&A tab?
No, I did not. Sorry. I
No,
was I
that's
was,
okay.
I was so excited to build my own agent.
I wasn't trying to take you away.
Okay, so
So you can ask a question like, what is the SuperBinder costing? So I just added the question. You should see it at the bottom.
yep.
I could answer it as a human, and I can say it's $205,000, or I can answer with AI, and it'll give you its answer here, and then it will link
Based on the content you've already provided it.
based on everything in the binder. So Q&A is everything in the binder. It now
Fantastic.
knows. So it's gonna pull out the project costing draft. So it's pulled out this one. It's pulled out, yeah, it's basically pulled out the same thing across, it's found three different instances of it. So it's the same document three times, different
Mm.
parts that it found. But it'll show you like the bibliography of how it's answered the question.
One of the concerns we always have is, did it come up with this
You
answer
did
on
it
its
live.
own? And so we always want to have that reference check back to check its homework and to assist. So, well, does that in that Q&A, because it's referencing back to the original sources, is that kind of the concept there?
Yeah, that's the concepts. Or if somebody asks you a question, it's one thing to take an AI's answer to it, but for example, if you ask it a question about a policy and it gives you a policy answer, you may or may not want to you may value its answer and kind of quick reference, but you may want the source policy pages that actually related to that answer
Hmm.
and not its interpretation of those things, right? So it's great that you could say, I'll look back at one of the files that we uploaded. Oops, if I go to if I expand all here, like
I'm really liking this structure, by the way.
for example, because I've got like the JFK thing for example. So if I wanted to say like, um, what date was box 11 from? What date was box 11 of the JFK docs from? So I could ask the question. I could attempt to answer it with AI. I actually don't know if I look at this one, I don't know if actually that we OCR'd it. Yeah, that's the
W-
problem. We didn't OCR it. So let me jump ahead. Let me hit OCR on it.
Yeah, but did you also point it to that collection?
Here actually I just want to reset this. The Q&A is the entire
Oh,
binder.
right, right,
Yeah,
right,
it's the
right.
entire binder, so I shouldn't have to say that. So actually, I've
Right.
I've OCR'd this now. Now we have now it's done even the handwriting, right? It's interpreted the handwriting, and I can go back and answer with AI. So here it says the document indicates that box 11th was from March 29th, 1971. And then I can actually click on this and it
Mm.
takes me right into the document so I can actually verify that information myself. So that's the Q&A thing.
I, I I see so many possibilities and scenarios um, on how to use this.
What comes to mind as being the biggest opportunity and maybe the biggest blocker for something like this?
Well, for ourselves, we've launched the Impact Lab,
Mm-hmm.
and the Impact Lab is designed to tackle the organization's most difficult and complex problems using artificial intelligence. And we are going to be coming together as a team, um, working on the problem. I could see the whole Q&A section really addressing as the team's working through the problem. That's kind of like your parking lot of, hey, what do we have to do? You've got your goal of how you want to solve the problem. What is the problem? What is the root cause? And then the agent part is just a whole analysis on trying to figure out what the problem is and how to come up to that solution. So I look at it sort of as a holistic thing, that where the team comes together and tries to come up with a result. Um, and the fact that you could do it live in collaboration together, create a knowledge structure, um, put all of your relevant information to that problem within that knowledge structure, and then your imagination is the limit on your analysis, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that potential is massive, and we could solve pretty much any type of problem that you come together as a team to work on. Limitations, I'd have to play around with it
Yeah.
a bit more. Um, I think perhaps a learning curve is going to be a limitation, which
Yeah.
is always the challenge for us in our capability matrix. Every time that we put somebody who has limited to, level one um, understanding on how to do prompting, how to interact with AI, that seems to be always the limitation for us.
Mm.
And so that's why we're building out this program to teach and expand people's capabilities. So I really see this as a level two, level three, level four tool. But if you get knowledgeable people on solving those problems together, a bunch of level two, level threes working in there, I can't see why you can't solve any problem.
Yeah, I think the learning curve, I agree with you, will be the most challenging aspect for people. It assumes a sort of base level knowledge of how to work with large language models, how to attach content to them, how much content you can attach. It also sort of assumes that people will have good prompting strategies in the collaboration room
That's right.
and that you build an agent and it will have a fit for purpose goal. And for someone like you who understands I need a specific agent like this sometimes, and then I need a specific agent like this other times, you've been having to use multiple GPTs or multiple
Hmm.
configuration files to do that. Now you can come into a space, you can build your agents once and for all, and they all live together in the same environment. So
Right.
you can build the deep thinker beside the technical writer, beside the solution architect, beside the policy person, beside the French translator, beside the presentation builder, and you can trigger them at any time in your creative process.
Yep.
So, hey, I've gone through and created a draft of what I think the strategic plan is going to be. I'm going to really switch, quickly pivot, create a strategic presentation for my, deputy, and put it into a PowerPoint. And then great, when that's done, I'll come back and I'll bring back my feedback and I'll continue on the creative process through that. You have to think about these agents like they're people. You have to think about
Right.
them as when would you go and talk to a person, right? I'm going to go talk to procurement, and I'm going to go talk to finance. I'm going to go talk to the tech team. I'm going to go talk to legal. I'm going to go talk to, the vendor, and I'm going to go talk to these people. Like you have to understand the reason you know when to talk to them is you have an expectation of what you're going to get from them, and you know that their knowledge, their goals, their insights are all completely different. And
Yep.
you, as someone leading a project or spearheading an initiative, you go out and essentially draw from those teams and you formulate it in your head and you have to make something out of it. The difference here is that all those teams could come into the same creative space. Legal could drop in their standard boilerplate terms. Procurement could drop in their templates. You could bring in the technical team to drop in their business requirements, and then you can simply have an agent representing each one of those teams, and then you would work with them at speed, and they would have all of the knowledge that those people have contributed. So I don't have to call my head of legal and say, "Do you have that form? What's the template? How do you do an RFP? How do you do a PQR? How do you do these other things?" It's in there, and I have a legal agent helping me to do that. But it's
Hmm.
such a radical mind shift to how people tend to work. And the other thing is when you get multiple people in that creative space with AI, I've not seen anything like that so far. I've not seen any environment where you can have multiple people interrogating the same number of agents at the same, or the same body of agents, the same cohort of agents at the same time, and then I'm reading your response, I'm getting inspired by it, I'm thinking about it, I'm adding to it, etc. That's
I,
completely new.
I don't think people are even thinking of that.
Yeah.
honestly.
It's so
The,
lonely
so,
chatting with
so,
AI by myself.
so there's a few things as well. Um, what I think is going to be interesting is understanding how other people prompt.
Mm,
Um, because I've invented my own methodologies. I've over the years I built my own tool set. I know how to approach a problem differently, and so eh, I I think it'll be interesting to learn how other people approach their problems. Like I could spend time studying how you think and how you prompt versus how I prompt. And I think there's a huge benefit there that I don't think people really understand yet. Um, because we're all kind of inventing our own language. And so um I've taken a number of courses that I looked at them and I'm like, well, it's okay. I prefer my approach and my method better. Um, but then that was one individual's like there's no right way to do this out there yet.
yeah.
Everyone's kind of trying to figure it out.
And what's helpful is that you could come in and see my prompts and you could say, oh, I see what Janek's doing. You need to prompt differently. Like
Yeah.
this was one of, I just found this when I was cleaning up today. This was one of my early prompts for um, building out SuperBinder when I didn't really know what I was doing. But this is a single prompt where I start my work.
Mm,
And then I will go forward and basically I'll probably in each interaction, like in each iteration, it's kind of cliche because people will just type in not working, fix it again. That's kind of the cliche about technical people using AI.
yeah.
But like I will write paragraphs per interaction with it. And when I'm very, very explicit about what I want, it absolutely performs amazingly. But when I'm
Mm,
not, it will lead me down these dark technical rabbit holes of bad judgment. And so, a couple of sentences gets you nowhere when you're
yeah.
doing something technical. A long, thought out starting point is a game changer. And so, if you were even to create a super binder training space,
Hmm.
you could have a breakout room called Let's Learn to Prompt.
Yes.
And you could be in there and you could say, employee number one is going to go and type it in. And you could say, actually, try this again. Here's how I would write that prompt differently. And then you
Right.
can get this, and then you can see how the agent responds to that change of prompt, and you can teach other people as well. And you don't only have to save the agent's output as an artifact, by the way. You can save all of your inputs as artifacts. So anything
Mm,
you create, you can actually put it back into the super binder as well as like a prompting style guide.
yeah. You create your own prompt
And so you
book.
can create your own prompt book basically that lives in your binder, even to the point where you can create an agent called prompt helper or whatever,
Right.
that reads all of your historical prompts and say, I'm trying to do this. Can you write me an amazing prompt
Yeah.
to get what
Uh,
I want? And then
eh,
it'll read all of your style guide and it will write like JP writes a prompt instead of writing like I write a prompt.
right.
It's
And one thing I've found, again, using this human-centered approach, is if you give a prompt that's too difficult for someone to kind of really understand, it
mm,
becomes overwhelming for them,
yeah,
and yeah, you really have to build them up the way naturally we've evolved to prompt the way we prompt today. And uh, I don't know if there's a shortcut just yet. And I think it's the concept, it's the concept of interacting with this system that you got to learn. It's not necessarily a one or a zero or black or white. It's the way you approach it, which is hard to teach in a textbook.
yeah, and I stand by what I think is a reasonable amount of time. I think it reasonably takes 2 to 4 months to
Yeah.
start to have a concept of how to prompt well, and not and maybe using it for maybe an hour or two a day for 2 to 4 months until you actually
Yes.
start to figure it out. And it sounds it sounds sort of like that. I don't know how to short circuit that learning curve, but I think it's the fundamental difference between people who are going to be incredibly successful with this technology and others who may give up on it too easily is the amount of time and depth that you stick with it. But it is interesting though that Ethan Mollick he posted up a study yesterday on LinkedIn or a couple days ago that I saw that they randomly sampled 500 users. Some they gave AI and some they didn't give AI, and they were able to get about of a essentially it was a 2x productivity boost.
Hmm.
And they evaluated the outputs from them, and the quality was higher. And that was with people who were just sort of randomly selected into using it. I think from my experience, I would say probably from a technical perspective, it's probably at least a 5x once you figure out how to work with it. So you're either doing 5 times the work or you're 5 times as fast, depending on how you want to look at it.
Right.
Or your team of five is doing the work of 25 people. And that's that's where I think you get maybe as you progress through that path, you start to get these multiplier effects. Um, it definitely changes the work though. Like the thing about SuperBinder is it was written by AI. As much as I say I wrote the description of it, and probably by the time it was done, I wrote at least 80 to 100 pages of plain language description of what I was going for. I did that in chunks, right? Features. But I didn't code SuperBinder. It was coded by an AI. And so, yeah, there's little bugs here and there, just like every single app. But fundamentally, now that you can create an app like SuperBinder using AI, you can also now use that to help you iterate faster and faster and faster. So we can now have whole teams of people coming into SuperBinder using AI and developing even faster than I could developing this just one on one with an AI.
Right.
So walk
Th-
us through this.
this is the approach I typically take, and I basically see that it's been a pattern. But what I'm finding super interesting is the original idea and concept comes from the human.
Mm,
And just like you mentioned, you're the one who said, "Hey, I've got this idea, and this is what I want to do." And then once, for me, similar, I've got 40,000 different ideas, and once I put that in there, I do create a capture, what I call a knowledge structure. I then enhance that knowledge structure with AI, and I could go into different domains of knowledge, and I could flip domains. So if I'm doing research on lichen, I'm going to look at it from a biological perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a gardening perspective, doesn't matter. Then from that structure, I do create an artifact structure, and once I'm at this place, I could transform that into anything I want.
mm,
And so these are always my three main steps. And then I could do my analysis. I could enhance. I could zoom in. I could zoom out. I could expand it. And then once I'm happy with that enhancement, then I draft it.
mm.
So that's pretty much the formula I follow a lot. Um, but for the 4-level capability matrix, I found that folks, they have to start off simply by just doing drafting, doing plain language conversions, summarizations, styles editing. And then once you get comfortable with that, then you could really get into that document structuring, doing multiple sections. I just use an example here for work about regulatory comparison, but any type of comparison between various documents, your data extraction, you could really start with your basic agents. And then once you get that down, you could really get into like multiple document synthesis, that thematic analysis, as I was saying, going between your domains. Sorry, that switched over.
No, that's okay.
And then you could start detecting patterns across documentation. And this is what I'm doing with the
Mm,
migratory birds analysis. You could obviously change your agents with tools like Logic Studio, and then you have that really structured where I take a document and you create the architecture of the document. So you generate that document in multiple sections with multiple agents. So that's kind of the path that I typically follow.
So how many levels does this thing go?
Well, it's 4 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And where I'm trying to go is how far can humans be or sort of augmented in their capability without having the AI do everything for you. So I'm always trying to make sure that it's an assistive device, that it's supporting you, um, because the intrinsic gut feelings I find is very much required for
Mm-hmm.
you to direct and to move and to shift and to expand and to close, and that direction is critical to get a quality product.
Hmm. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this tool, once you get your fingers on it or you get under the hood a little bit around it, it's I mean it's live for you to use right now.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it changes the way you work because I think it goes back to that concept of if you want to go fast, go alone, right? And that's what we've been
Hmm.
doing. Those of us who have adopted AI intrinsically into our workflows, like it feels like we're going fast alone.
Yes,
I'm
we are.
hoping SuperBinder is we go far together.
Mm.
And so I could bring a whole team into a binder and I could spend an entire week with them, coaching them, evaluating them, helping them adopt the technology, seeing where the pain points are, building new knowledge. And I think at the end of it, what we would have is we'd have two things. We have more knowledgeable people because the way that we all interact is now transparent, right? How we all
Hmm.
work with it with AI is transparent for the first time,
Yep.
really. And then secondly, as we're going, we're building out knowledge that we can collectively all use. So right now, if I were to build a GPT and it's in my sort of subscription account, I see the prompt, I see the tooling, I see the setup,
Right. Right.
and I'm getting the outputs, and then I'm just copying them out of GPT and sending them to people. Now, if we
Mm.
come up with something we like, whether it be a good prompt or some new knowledge or a standard, like an architectural standard or a technical standard, it lives in the binder for everybody else to be able to leverage as well. So I could put in my own technical spec as a project leader, for example, and then I could hand it over to a project manager who may not be a technical person, but now they have in the binder my knowledge to be able to evaluate what the product team is doing and saying, are
Yep.
they following the standards? Are they using the architecture? Are they, are things, are things aligning with what the expectations are? And that knowledge is shared knowledge now, which is tremendously exciting for me.
I don't even know. I don't even know the potential. Like I know it's there. I can see it, but you've built a multiplier, um, which is I have to think about it.
Yeah.
This is just a model that I don't know if this is going to happen, but I'm hoping that as we as we get people's capabilities up, first off, there's just so much work that needs to be done,
Mm.
that the potential to improve is great. And I think even once we do this work, we're going to be really leveling up, hopefully, um, to areas I don't think we've even thought of yet. I've got two models here: organization A, organization B, and the typical thought is, well, we're going to use AI to shrink our footprint, which most likely will happen.
Hmm.
And there are absolutely some jobs that are going to leave, but your overall potential, and this is just sort of a visual graphic to say, well, you are expanding out, but what if we reinvested the AI capacity and the augmentation of the org, um, where you grow and expand even more with the resources and the humans that you have. So let's say 80% of your staff get to a level 2 or a level 3. The potential to grow and to take those efficiencies and reinvest them into that growth, to me, is more of a benefit than if you shrink down to 2 or 3 or 4 people, and try to do everything yourselves, just because you're
Yeah.
you're not getting that perspective from everybody. You're getting your own perspective.
So it's not degrowth at all. It's expansion,
It's expansion.
right?
It's expansion.
Yeah, it's about reinvesting
And
good
this is the last
skills.
concept. I don't know if
Yeah.
I've talked to you about this, but this is the inspiration to all of this was the Da Vinci
Mm.
man. So you're going to see on my background here.
And there
So
it is.
I've got the Vitruvian man,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so basically, I was using AI, and I sort of took a picture because I wanted to read all the text that was under here,
Mm.
and it said, oh well, this is basically the Vitruvian man and this Da Vinci who captured the essence of Vitruvius, who was a Roman architect
Mm.
in and the concept was he would put humans in the middle of the architecture, and everything should be proportionate based
Mm.
off of that person. And so this is where modern measurements come from, your foot and cubits and whatnot.
Mm.
It's from this philosophy. Now, what Da Vinci did is he took that concept and he also added Plato, and he added Aristotle concepts. So he put the person in the middle of a circle, and he also put the person in the middle of a square.
Mm.
And so the square is the physical, and the circle is the metaphysical. And so
Mm.
the square is the intelligence, the logic, the limitations, and the circle is really that human spirit. And so, but together they're combined, and that makes divine symmetry. And so from that point, I said, okay, well, what if the square is AI, and what if the circle is
Mm.
human human insight?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's this whole thing is built off what I'm now calling Vitruvian architecture.
Amazing. I think you're out. I think philosophically, you're the farthest out ahead of anyone that I've spoken to around the application of it. I know some people are trying to think about the technology sort of from the socioeconomic, and some people are thinking about it from the kind of the job impacts. But I don't think that people are applying that philosophical humanist lens to the adoption of AI, and I think it is the right discussion to have,
Hmm.
especially it addresses most of the ethical concerns in some fashion or another around the AI side.
It
And
really does.
I did a talk um, in Edmonton last week to kick off our agency AI event, and I talked about the five-headed hydra of AI ethics, and I talked about it being sort of the trust and the bias and the usage, the disruption. Like I went through, and the security. I think those were the five that I talked about. But when you leave the person at the center, as the, if you will, the spiritual center of what we're trying to accomplish, then the technology is an enabler. And one of the things that I reflected on is I don't know if you've ever read the original I, Robot by Asimov,
I'm not.
but the concept was throughout the entire robots series that he wrote was that robots had these three principles: that they couldn't hurt a person or allow a person to come to injury. I think, what was the other one? They couldn't they shouldn't allow themselves to be harmed, and I'm going to forget the third one. I think it's something around the truthfulness. But in essence, there, I was flagging the at the presentation the fact that we're building out all these AI systems, but we don't ever stop to set our ground rules with them,
Right.
and we simply dive in. And the reason I think we don't do that is I don't think we've articulated them to our own satisfaction. Is we've got certainly standards of ethics and honesty and integrity and things like that, but when it comes to sort of knowledge and approach and principles, what you're highlighting and what you're structuring through your human-centered approach is terrific, because I think you could I think you could encapsulate that in a way that AI would understand, and
Yeah.
then you sort of implant that at the fundamental level of how you're working with these AI agents, and you are embedding that into the system, if you will. And so it would be great to take your human-centered approach and then have that almost in a machine-readable format, plug it in at the very root of every interaction with these AI
Mm,
systems, and say, don't in a human-centric approach, are you teaching me to do something so I'm able to do it? Are you doing it for me and not explaining it? Like there's probably nuance throughout every single type of interaction where your human-centered approach would embed or fine-tune one of these models to be much more spiritually or ethically or conceptually aligned to the kind of interaction that you're seeking. And I don't think the models have that today.
right.
I don't think
What
they've got that part to them at this point.
I think that's why models are not funny. Um, seriously, like um, a, a, a model has never come up with something that's made me cry.
Right.
Um, and and so I study that, and I study why.
Yeah.
I think we are in a race to see what it can do, but no one is really saying, do we actually need that? There's a reason why people get an ick when they see the AI talking to you on the screen with the voice and
Mm,
the image, and it looks exactly real and it sounds exactly real, but
mm,
there's still an ick.
mm,
And so I think that's what the ick is. It's just it cannot produce that
mm,
yet. And so I don't know. I think there will be a point, and I'm kind of seeing around the corner. And um, when I sort of launched this, I've got people from the UK calling me now. I've got United Emirates calling me, and these are not technical people. These are humanist organizations.
mm,
A lady I had a call with her this week, and she is tech, but she tried to build exactly what we wanted to build,
mm,
and she was really interested in the work I was doing so they could integrate it into their product, if they want to call that.
mm.
So I mean, it's something.
No, it is, and to get back to your question, you said we're not really asking. The question is, it can do it, but do we want it to? I think I can definitively say when I look at in Canada, our declining productivity, when I look at our GDP,
Mm,
when I look at the need for the public service to be much more responsive, the need for us to be much more able to move at speed to address societal issues and to provide supports and to provide the kinds of broad-based service delivery needed to uplift our our industries, our education, our competitiveness, our entrepreneurship. We've lost more than 100,000 entrepreneurs in the last 5 years.
yep.
So I think I would say definitively, from my perspective, we absolutely need the technology. But if your human-centered approach could allow us to have a relationship with technology that is not the ick-based relationship, but um, is more measured, or I should say seated in an approach or a philosophy that people can sort of identify with, then I think it's going to be far more interesting and compelling. And that's where, when I was working on digital ecosystems a couple of years ago, like the idea was that I actively disliked the experience of working with technology even before AI got here.
Right.
And I don't think that this new technology is the fix to it. I think it's an accelerator, and it's certainly a paradigm shift. Like how we're going to work is completely different. But I don't think we've solved to make having a relationship with technology a joyous thing yet. Um, and I think that what it could do for us, like the sorts of things that we find joyous is relationships with nature, relationships with people. And
Yes.
so far as AI can further enable those sorts of things to happen, either through taking us out of the drudgery of manual work so we can have more relationships with people, or in a way taking us away from this slavery of the screen where we are bound to our computers to make anything happen, to make money. I have to tap away at this thing 10, 12, 14 hours a day. If AI can start to step in that place, I think then it can be a conduit to that, and I think that that is worthy of pursuit.
Yeah. And I would add to your, if you do not put the human at the center, I've done a lot of change in my life. I've brought organizations through change after change after change. And I've seen the resistance.
Mm,
And the resistance is getting harder and stronger.
mm,
Um, and you we both are experiencing the resistance of AI in general, just the concept, and I don't think people even understand why they're resisting it per
mm,
se. But it's intrinsic, and as soon as you say the human is at the center, that resistance fades somewhat,
mm,
not fully. And as soon I don't think it'll be successful otherwise. You may have products out there, you may have organizations that go completely 100% AI, which is fine. But at the end of the day, uh, I don't think it will be adopted
mm,
en masse. And we've seen in history what happens when it's not adopted en masse. So
mm,
I think organics is going to become more and more and more requested for, and organics are really going to have a the people love it, organic food, and they'll prioritize organic food, but I think that'll expand into all domains, into the arts, into the crafts,
mm.
into the interactions, into the readings.
The sense of something being authored by another mind, not an AI.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
If they'll be able to tell the difference.
yeah, if they can, and already, like, if you look at the, like, a large minority of internet content now is just AI generated.
It
I,
is. Yeah.
I think then I think there's a sort of a generation or two where you'll still be able to tell the difference maybe between pre-AI and post-AI. But there is, you can still tell the difference to it, but you're going to start to have people who are raised natively around this AI generated content who won't, it won't seem as jarring to them at that point.
So this is what's going to happen. So I
Yeah.
now have a classic writing desk, and where I'm writing by hand, and I'm going way, way, way old school, 18th century writing. Um, and I think we're gonna start seeing people do this. I think we're gonna start the demand of people connecting to nature, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
the demand of people connecting with each other is augmenting. I'm seeing it now, and I think it's as a result of this new era.
Mm. And do you think you'll do your handwriting and you'll take your photos and load it into SuperBinder and then have all of your
I
handwritten
will.
notes and
I
knowledge
will.
there, fully
I will.
transcribed, fully
I
ready to be
will.
actioned?
I already do it.
Perfect.
It's a
Yeah,
hybrid
I
world.
think, but what you're describing is perfect because you can go to the cabin. You can just take your pen and your piece of paper with you. You can sit in the sun. You can put your feet in the water. You can sketch things. You can doodle. You can do all that kind of stuff, and it's not non-productive,
Right.
right? Like there was a time pre-computers where that was a productive use because you were sort of exercising through an idea and you're exploring and you're getting inspiration. Um, and the idea of the muse coming to you, that when you put yourself into that creative space, your mind sort of expands in a weird way that it's hard to describe to people who haven't kind of spent much time there. But the ideas start to come in, and you don't know where they've come from.
Hmm.
right?
That's a good point. I've never thought about it that
You're
way.
tapping into something that is very hard to define. And there's books like Scott Pressfield or Stephen Pressfield, I think, about the war of art, and some of the books as well like that. The idea that you kind of fight through resistance and you tap into something greater, and then you flow through the muse, and then this has been part of the narrative for thousands of years. This idea of the
Mm,
muse coming to creative people. But then when
mm,
computers came out, what happened is like creativity was sort of associated with interacting with the machine, right? Like I have to be writing here. Sketching in my notebook is a sort of a non-productive thing versus that sending that email that I need to send, or doing that market research, or reading that report, or other things like that. I think AI in its finer sense can help us sit at the dock and sketch on the notepad and
yeah.
go for a hike and think about those things and take a quick voice memo and draw a little doodle and take a photo of a book that inspired us, see some art, and then synthesize those things together in a productive way that creates an assistive way of storytelling that is still you and your own voice, still the things that you saw that were inspired to you, but in a sense curated through the technology. And but maybe not the voice of the AI. Maybe there is no voice of the AI present in that, but it's simply enabling you to do things you would never otherwise do, and tapping into aspects of your voice and your muse that would have been off limits to you, perhaps.
And what I'm finding fantastic is its ability to connect my various ideas together
Hmm.
when I wasn't necessarily, that was not my intent.
Hmm.
So it really is multiplying my ideas and concepts, um, which I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well, and so every time I think of something, I try to go pick a previous idea I had and to see how I could integrate it into this, and it just multiplies it.
Hmm. One more thing for the binder.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, I think this has been a ton of fun chat.
yeah.
I would love your feedback as you start to play around with it,
Oh,
or
yeah, I'll definitely
give
play
it
with it.
to your team. This is its first real release of it yet, so there's a lot of quality of life improvements that I'm sure that we can dream up and add to it. A lot of integrations. As I was building out the sections, I thought, why isn't this just like my SharePoint site? We could just use that. But that being said, with this ethos in mind, I would love to see where this product goes. I'd love to see if there's tangible effects. We're kicking off literally tomorrow our 50-person AI
Mm.
team. So we have the first cohort of 50 people. So they're going to be diving into SuperBinder to both enhance it, but also try it and to build knowledge. I think it's an incredibly fascinating time. I would like to call everyone who's taken the time to get to an hour and 39 minutes into this 15-minute demo to reach out if you'd like to collaborate. This is something that we've built right here in Canada. It's completely free. It's completely cross province, cross concern. It's a creative tool. It is a business tool. Let's build it together. We have to start to take these things on in a focused way. We have to start to contend with productivity and GDP decline and all these other things. We have to, for you in the public service, we have to make better services much faster available to our citizens. They're counting on us to save their time, save their money, and be able to deliver something much more profound. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you want to collaborate, we are here. We've got dedicated teams to this. Do not hesitate. Send me an email, send me something on LinkedIn. Let's really build out the possibilities together. And I think with that spirit, that's the spirit that's sort of missing. That's going to be this unifying piece. And I'm hoping that we can use tools and opportunities like this to build, increase our productivity, but really to build better human to human relationships. So don't hesitate. We would love to collaborate with you, JP, your teams. We'd love to collaborate with anybody participating. And let's make this something that we can enhance and grow ourselves, and retain an amount of autonomy and control over our relationship with technology as things are accelerating so quickly. This is how we stay in control. So I hope that is an outcome of tools like this.
This was great, Janik. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy your day.
Cheers.
Bye.